Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about Star Renegades. Star Renegades is a roguelike or roguelite or whatever they are called RPG with turn-based combat in which you take control of a group of soldiers set on a path to prevent total destruction by this evil empire. And what's really very apparent is that the pixel art in this game is just brilliant. There's no other word for it. It's really colorful, it looks good, it's well animated, and the 80s inspired synthesized soundtrack is very soothing. And it's just the whole way that the game presents itself is just mesmerizing. It's really very, very good. Every run that you do in this game, you get 3 randomized planets to explore, and every planet has a main boss. And the movement on the planet is a bit tricky. I mean, the pathfinding is not great, but along the way you can pick up certain loot, gear, upgrades, coins. So there is already a certain amount of strategy involved to take the ideal route on a certain planet that will give you the most rewards. And that also means that you can pick your fights basically, and the more enemies you try to take on, the bigger ones, the more rewards you will get, of course. So there's quite a bit of strategy just to find the ideal path on the planet. And the turn-based combat that you do is very interesting in this game. I mean, every day, you have 3 days on each planet, and you have 3 options to reach certain areas on the map. So it works like this. So you walk on the map, and you think, okay, I'm gonna take this route, because if I do that, I can pick up that loot, and then I can go to that enemy, because that's one of the enemies on the Nemesis system. So if I kill that enemy, then I get the most rewards. I can upgrade my soldiers faster. But there's also a chance you'll die, of course. You know, if you take on too many fights with bigger enemies, then you're basically screwed. So when you get into a fight, there's this timeline, and you can see when the enemy will execute their attack. So you can plan ahead what action you can perform before the enemy attacks. And depending on your characters in your team, like there are fast characters with light armor, there are tanky characters that take more time to execute their moves, there are characters that have high shields. So you need to plan your attacks. And for instance, it's always a good idea to try and push back the enemy with one of your team members that has high stagger, for instance. So the point here is that every team member, you have to choose the most optimal command against the enemy unit. So usually, as I said, it's a good idea to execute a move before the enemy strikes, and hopefully your attacks will set the enemy back so you have more time to execute more of your moves. So again, there's quite a bit of strategy there to try and win every battle. So also, you have to check the weaknesses of certain enemies and exploit them as much as you can. And after every day, you sort of camp with your team members. And as you do that, you can trade out certain cards that you've collected on the map, or that you get from killing enemies. And these cards will establish a better relationship between your characters. So if you switch out cards between them, you know, there's a card that gives you more health, there's a card that gives you a little buff, and that sort of thing. And the better the relationship between certain characters, the higher the reward. So certain characters will execute a sort of a combo together in battle, and those can be super deadly. So it is a good idea also to exchange cards between characters that you know that will have this amazing combination that you are looking for. So again, there's a lot of strategy involved in this game. So after these 3 days of exploring the planet and fighting enemies, you face off with the boss, and hopefully you have leveled your characters so much that you can take on the boss. And again, you have to plan ahead. You have to look at what kind of traits does this boss have. I mean, certain bosses, they have fire damage, so it makes no sense to have your best tanky character wielding a gun that does fire damage, because it won't help against a fiery enemy. There's a lot going on, you know. There's a lot more than meets the eye, and what meets the eye is already very nice to look at. But there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and as I said, it might even be a little bit overwhelming. So many things you can take into account before getting into a fight, and also things can get kind of messy. Also, when there's lots going on the screen, you have a lot of soldiers fighting a whole bunch of enemies, and there's a lot of flashy things going on the screen, so that makes things a little hard to see on the screen what is going on, what certain attacks will do to a certain enemy. So that's that's a minor complaint in my opinion. Again, you just have to make sure to reap the most rewards by picking the best fights, but not too many, because if you overstretch yourself or your team, then you can be wiped out. And then back again, that's sort of the roguelike element of this game. You're set back, you get back to this hub area where you can recruit new characters or new soldiers for your team. So it's not too bad that you die, and you can try a new combination of soldiers, which is always a nice thing to do. But even so, and it's a bit of the nature of these type of games, is that after your team gets wiped out, things are randomized, and again you have to start from scratch. And of course the planets are randomized, so that you can take different paths, and certain enemies look different, but there is a bit of recycled stuff going on. I mean, that's just part of the sort of the repetition that these type of games just has. But even so, this game is highly polished. It is very charming, and there's a lot of thinking going on, a lot of strategy, and it's really, really good. And I think you should really check this game out. Highly recommended. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time.